Hi, in this tutorial I will be covering Mari Locator workflows that help you to position textures and decals. This is a redo of an older tutorial and now includes the latest features that have been added as part of Mari Extension Pack 6 and 6R2. For those of you that are new to locators, let's do a quick overview. In the object palette, Mari allows you to add locator objects to your scene. When I add one, you can see my node graph goes empty and nothing really seems to happen in my viewport. That is because I have not yet entered the transform object tool, which is by default hidden behind the select tool here. Now that it is active, I can see the transform gizmo in my viewport, but so far nothing really is using this locator. So let's click onto our original object or reselect it in the object palette, and let's now create a node that can use a locator. I'm going to create, for example, an object space radial gradient node, which creates a three-dimensional gradient in your scene. Going to the transform tab of the node, we have two UI elements, the so-called locator lists. One to control the center of the gradient and one to control the general size of the gradient. I could now create new locators by clicking on this plus button or choose my previously created locator from the dropdowns. To activate the locator manually, either select it again in the object palette or press this P button next to the dropdown. Now I can use my locator to control this gradient, for example to move it or scale it. To scale uniformly, you need to hold Ctrl and Shift and drag on one of these scale handles. So far we have seen the standard Mari workflow for dealing with locators, which is a very manual process, as you will agree. Extension Pack adds a whole lot of features to make this hopefully a bit smoother. Let me delete my manually created locator first. I will select the node and just activate the transform tool or use the hotkey Shift and T. I will now get a pop-up asking me which of those two attributes I want to modify, or if I want to modify them all at once. Let's double click on all, and Extension Pack will auto create a locator for me and assign it, so I can immediately start modifying it. Once I'm done and either select an object or change the tool in the toolbar, this temporary locator will disappear again, but I can at any time just re-enter the transform tool and continue where I left off. This pop-up dialog will of course only appear when you are editing a node where multiple locators can be assigned. If you want to skip this dialog, you can activate the transform tool using the hotkey Alt, Shift and T, as opposed to using the standard hotkey Shift and T. Using that action hotkey will never show the pop-up dialog and always assign one locator to all possible slots. Before I show some additional features, let me jump to something a bit more visually interesting. I have my existing scene here and I want to place a decal as a full material on it. I'm going to use one of the Decal Material templates that ship with Extension Pack, which can be found here in the shelf. Decal Materials can be identified by this icon. Let me show you two ways to quickly fill one of those material templates with data. First, I will select my material template and go to my image manager and select a bunch of images I loaded previously. Then right mouse click and choose ingest into node. In this dialog, you can assign the images to different slots of the materials. But Extension Pack has a whole bunch of rules to auto assign based on image name. So in this case, this is all correct. So once I confirm this dialog, my decal material is fully set up. Before I place it, let me show you a second quick way to create one of these decal materials. Again, with my image selection in the image manager, I just drag them in the node graph. I get this pop-up where I can specify which nodes I would like to create from these images. At the bottom here, all materials from your shelf are listed. So if you have set up your own material and saved it in the shelf, you can auto ingest this way directly into it. I'm going to choose again my Unreal Decal material, then confirm the pop-up, and those are the two ways to quickly create a material from image data. Now let's slot this decal material over my existing base so we can finally return to locators. If I look at the decal material in its transform tab, we have one of those locator lists, meaning I can just use the transform tool again to place it. But I don't really see anything in my viewport. In the tool properties toolbar of the transform tool, we see a bunch of options, mostly added by Mari Extension Pack. The most useful for locators is probably the Align to View button, which will position the locator centered on your view. We seem to have some repetition, which is controlled by this clip dropdown here. So now we can move the decal material around the object and place it more to our liking. Another option is scale to fit. This one will place the locator at the center of your object and scale it to be the size of the object's bounding sphere. Now you might have noticed this random jumping of the locators. This is a Mari bug at the moment, and to work around it, exit the transfer mode and go back into it to make the locators behave again. We have some additional options up here that are useful for locators as well. The first is the stepping angle, which controls the rotational snapping that happens when you hold down Control while clicking on one of those rotation rings of the transform tool. So here, for example, if I set this to 45, hold down Control and rotate, I rotate in 45-degree increments. Lastly, we have the locator size option, which just controls how big the locator should appear in the viewport. The space option determines if the locator should always be drawn aligned to world space coordinates or be in local space. To be honest, I never ever need the world space option, so I think it is pretty safe to ignore. And this is the overview of the up-to-date locator workflow in Mari, including all the latest extension pack 6 editions. So, thank you for listening.